A small tribe stood on the edge of a dying world. A handful of warriors, their banners snapping in the cold steppe wind. No one believed this tribe would change history. Yet from this humble beginning would rise an empire that stretched across 3 continents and ruled millions of lives for 600 years. Their armies thundered at the gates of Vienna. Their fleets cut across the Mediterranean like blades. Their sultans lived in golden palaces, where whispers in shadowed corridors decided the fate of nations. But every empire carries a shadow, and the same power that built their world would one day drag it into ruin. From the dust of Anatolia, they rose. Through the conquest of Constantinople, they reached glory. And through centuries of betrayal, ambition, and war, they finally crumbled. How did a forgotten tribe rise so high? And what tore it apart from within? Stay with me, because the answers are darker, stranger, and far more human than you think. The 13th century was a world of chaos. The once mighty Seljuk Empire had fractured, torn apart by Mongol invasions and endless rivalries. In Anatolia, power shifted like sand in the wind. Cities rose, cities burned, and small principalities, known as beyliks, fought for survival on the frontier. Among these forgotten borderlands lived a man named Ertuğrul, leader of a small Turkic tribe. He commanded no great armies, owned no grand cities. Yet he and his people held a fierce determination. They lived on the frontier between crumbling empires, the Byzantine Christians to the west, the fading Seljuks to the east, and the looming Mongols in the north. For men like Ertuğrul, every day was a battle simply to endure. When Ertuğrul died, leadership passed to his son, a man named Osman. He was not a king, nor even the ruler of a vast realm. He was a frontier warrior, a Ghazi, one who fought for both survival and faith. Osman's domain was little more than a small cluster of villages and fortresses. Yet he carried a vision larger than his borders, and soon his people would carry his name forever. The Ottomans. The frontier world was perfect for bold men to rise. Byzantine control weakened in Anatolia, its borders stretched and neglected. The Mongols, though fierce, could not hold every inch of land they conquered. Opportunity lingered in every ruined castle and every abandoned field. The Ottomans struck where others hesitated, and slowly their power began to grow. But this was not only a story of war, it was also a story of faith, identity, and unity. The Ottomans promised protection for Muslims, tolerance for Christians and Jews, and stability for merchants whose trade routes crossed their land. Farmers, traders, and refugees flocked to their banner. What had once been a wandering tribe was transforming into the seed of something far greater. Still, no one in the courts of Europe or the palaces of Byzantium believed these newcomers posed a threat. To them, the Ottomans were just another small power in the wilderness. But that would soon change. Because Osman's descendants carried more than ambition. They carried destiny. And destiny was about to collide with the crumbling walls of Constantinople. The Ottomans began as shadows on the frontier. But with each raid, each captured fortress, their shadow grew longer. Under Osman's son, Orhan, the tribe transformed into a state. Coins were minted, armies organized, and cities fortified. What was once a loose band of warriors now pulsed with the heartbeat of empire. The first great prize was Bursa. In 1326, Ottoman forces laid siege to the wealthy Byzantine city. For years, Bursa had resisted, its walls towering above the plains. But the Ottomans did not relent. Starvation, fear, and relentless pressure broke the defenders. When the city finally fell, it became the Ottomans' first true capital, a jewel of commerce, religion, and culture. From Bursa, their power radiated outward. Europe began to notice. The Byzantines, already weakened, turned to their neighbors for aid. But rivals hesitated, distracted by their own wars. And while they argued, the Ottomans crossed the narrow waters of the Dardanelles. For the first time, Ottoman horsemen thundered into Europe. Villages burned, fortresses fell, and by the mid-14th century, much of the Balkans trembled under their advance. Then came the Battle of Kosovo in 1389. The Ottomans faced a coalition of Balkan forces, Serbs, Bosnians, Albanians, all desperate to halt their rise. The clash was brutal. Steel rang against steel, banners fell into the mud, and warriors fought to the death. The Ottomans lost their sultan, Murad Vermerd, but the coalition broke. The Balkans lay open, and Ottoman expansion surged forward. Still, the empire's greatest challenge lay ahead. In the heart of Europe stood the ancient city of Constantinople. For over 1,000 years, it had resisted every enemy. Surrounded by massive triple walls, guarded by the sea, it was called the Queen of Cities. Many believed it was unconquerable. But a new Ottoman ruler, a young and relentless sultan named Mehmed II, dreamed otherwise. In 1453, Mehmed brought cannons the size of houses, armies stretching for miles, and fleets that darkened the Bosphorus. For 57 days, the siege shook the world. Night after night, the Ottomans hurled fire and iron at the walls. Inside, priests prayed, soldiers braced, and citizens clung to hope. Then, on May 29th, the gates fell. Ottoman banners rose above Hagia Sophia. Constantinople, the heart of Byzantium, was no more. It was reborn as Istanbul, the glittering capital of the Ottoman Empire. The conquest shocked Europe and electrified the Muslim world. From that day on, the Ottomans were no longer frontier warriors. They were an empire, vast, unstoppable, and feared. But even as they expanded, storm clouds gathered. Because with every victory, new enemies rose, and ambition carried the seeds of downfall. The Ottomans stood at their peak. From the deserts of Arabia to the gates of Vienna, their empire stretched like a giant across 3 continents. In the 16th century, under Suleiman the Magnificent, they reached heights no one thought possible. His laws brought order, his armies brought fear, and his palaces gleamed with riches from across the world. For a moment, it seemed nothing could stop them. But history has a way of turning when no one expects it. After Suleiman's death in 1566, cracks began to appear. Sultans who followed were often weaker, more focused on the pleasures of the harem than the burdens of rule. Palace intrigues twisted power into the hands of viziers, eunuchs, and rival factions. Assassinations, betrayals, and corruption crept into the heart of government. And yet, the empire still stood. Even weakened, the Ottomans remained formidable. They clashed with the Habsburgs in Europe and the Safavids in Persia, winning battles but slowly bleeding strength. The treasury drained, and once mighty janissaries, the elite soldiers of the empire, became restless and unruly. No longer the disciplined warriors of old, many turned into mercenaries, wielding power in the streets of Istanbul itself. The great mystery is this: how did an empire so strong begin to unravel, not from enemies outside, but from within? Was it greed? Was it arrogance? Or was it simply the weight of centuries pressing down on a structure too vast to sustain? One moment captures this turning tide, the Battle of Vienna in 1683. The Ottomans had marched once more to Europe's heart. Their armies besieged the city, cannons roaring, tents stretching beyond the horizon. Victory seemed inevitable. But then, a coalition of European forces struck back. Cavalry charges thundered, breaking the siege and shattering Ottoman dreams of pushing deeper into Europe. That day, the world shifted. The empire that once terrified Europe now stood on the defensive. Defeats mounted, territories slipped away, and whispers spread that the Ottomans, the once unstoppable force, were no longer invincible. But the true tragedy? The Ottomans did not fall all at once. They endured, limping through centuries, neither alive nor fully dead. A sick man of Europe, caught between past glory and future uncertainty. Their downfall was not a single collapse. It was a slow, agonizing unraveling. The once mighty Ottoman Empire did not die with a single sword stroke. It faded, step by painful step. Each defeat carved away its strength. Each rebellion fractured its unity. And each generation felt the weight of decline pressing heavier. By the 18th century, the empire had lost much of its European territory. Rivals circled like wolves, Russia pushing south, Austria pressing west, Britain and France carving influence in the east. The Ottomans tried to reform, to modernize their armies, to strengthen their government. But every attempt was met with resistance from within. Old traditions clashed with new ideas, and reformers often paid with their lives. The 19th century brought humiliation after humiliation. Greece rose in rebellion and broke free. Egypt, once the jewel of the empire, slipped away under Muhammad Ali. The Balkans ignited with nationalism, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians fighting for independence. Each lost province was not just territory, but a wound to Ottoman pride. Europe now called the empire the sick man. Diplomats debated how long it would survive. Yet still, the Ottomans endured. They clung to Istanbul. They clung to Anatolia. They clung to the memory of their past greatness. The final blow came in the 20th century. World War I dragged the empire into a conflict it could not win. Allied forces tore through its lands, Arab revolts shattered its control, and its armies collapsed under modern warfare. By 1918, the once great empire lay in ruins. In 1922, the last sultan, Mehmed VI, boarded a ship and sailed into exile. The throne of Osman, which had stood for over 6 centuries, was gone. From the ashes, a new nation rose, Turkey, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. But the empire itself was no more. The Ottomans had risen from a small tribe to masters of half the known world. They had ruled with brilliance, culture, and power. Yet their fall was not sudden. It was the slow unraveling of ambition, tradition, and time. Their story is more than history. It is a reminder. No empire, no matter how vast, lasts forever. Power rises, power fades, and all that remains is the legacy left behind. For 6 centuries, the Ottoman Empire shaped the world. It built cities, toppled kingdoms, and carried cultures across continents. Its rulers were feared and admired, its armies legendary, its palaces unmatched in beauty. Yet in the end, the empire met the same fate as all who came before it. The story of the Ottomans is not just about battles and borders, it is about ambition and fragility, brilliance and betrayal, power and decay. It is the story of human greatness, always reaching higher, always dreaming bigger, and the inevitable truth that nothing lasts forever. Today, the echoes of the empire remain. In Istanbul's skyline, where domes and minarets still pierce the heavens. In the music, the food, the traditions that crossed continents under Ottoman rule. And in the lessons of history, reminding us that even the mightiest empires must one day bow to time. So ask yourself, what truly defines an empire? Is it the lands it conquers, the walls it builds, or the legacy it leaves behind? The Ottomans rose from nothing, soared to greatness, and crumbled into memory. And perhaps that memory is their most enduring power. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to subscribe to History Hub for more cinematic stories. Because history is not just about dates, it is about the rise and fall of dreams that once shook the world.